my daughter is the catalyst, I had to very much grow into being a mom. Corporate life is not for me. That was made very clear to me. But what it afforded me was a chance to be independent. My daughter has watched me go like from when she was in kindergarten and now she's in 10th grade, right? She's watched me during that time, like go from photographing people in our home, right? All the way to having, my own studio. Motherhood, it opened my heart. She made me rise to a higher purpose. She made me embrace my sacred calling. I was having really horrible cycles. And he was like, yeah, you have fibroids. So I had to have an emergency blood transfusion. How can you tell me that I can't have children, but I can give birth to a fibroid? Sometimes it just takes the courage to say, I need help.
Welcome to Baby Bump and Business, the podcast for creative moms growing a baby and a brand at the same time. I'm your host, Bee Trofort-Wilson, photographer, educator, and first-time mom to be, sharing the real unfiltered journey of pregnancy, entrepreneurship, and everything in between. Each week, I'll be joined by a fellow creative mom to talk about the beauty, the burnout, and the balance of it all. So let's get into it. Today's guest is Melissa Alexander. Melissa is an Atlanta-based photographer obsessed with growth and vulnerability, both of which form the backbone of her work. In particular, she focuses on the interrelational intimacy that exists within the Black American community. Hi, Melissa.
Hey, girl. Hey, girl.
I'm so excited to speak with you today.
I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So let's just jump right into it. So when you first found out that you were pregnant, what was your mindset when you got that news?
You know what's so funny is like around that time, like my daughter's father and I were definitely heading towards the outs, right? And in my mind, I was like, okay, I need to do something different. I was a server, I was DJing, like I was living life and it was a lot of fun, but I felt like this thing, like I felt this thing that said you wanted more. I felt this thing that said, why not move, right? I reached out to my grandmother who lives in Brooklyn, or she lived in Brooklyn. And I was like, hey, Nana, like, I think I want to move to New York. You know what I mean? She lived in a really nice part of Brooklyn. And that's where my mom's and my dad's families are from. So, like, I was like, why not? I've never lived in New York before. I think I have the fortitude for it. And then it was like, she said, yeah, come on. And then it was like maybe like a month later, I found out that I was pregnant. Right. And so when I counted back, you find out when you're about 6 weeks, 7 weeks, right? You know what I'm saying? The the timeline was like right when I conceived my daughter is when I had that conversation with my grandmother. So like when I say that my daughter is the catalyst, like even before I knew that I was having her or that I knew I was pregnant, she was already propelling me forward. Right.
Wow.
So it was crazy. My father and I didn't have the greatest relationship at the time. When I told him, I was like, Daddy, I'm going to be moving in with Nana. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to do all these things. And he was like, I'm so proud of you. You're making the right decision. And then it was like a few weeks later, I had to be like, okay, Daddy, so I'm pregnant. And he was like, what are you doing with your life? Right. And it was a crazy time because I was still trying to figure out how to take care of Melissa. Even though I was 25, well, no, really, I was 24. I was just starting to get a handle on like me and
Right.
coming into understanding me. And then as I'm coming to understand me, now I have another life to understand and to give my everything to, right? So it was a transformative time, it was the beginning of an adventure.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now,
Yeah.
when did you ended up picking up your camera through this process?
That happened. Well, I always tell people like I never really considered myself a photographer until um somebody told me they would pay me
Mm,
to, like to do this thing, right? And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'm a photographer now. But I've always had a camera in my hand since I was about 15, just kind of documenting I mean, even then, I didn't even have called it documenting. I would have just called it taking pictures of friends, different things that were happening in my life. And so I got my first camera when I was about 15. I asked my dad for DJ equipment, and he was like, sure, no problem. I thought I was going to be a DJ traveling all over Europe and like all over the world at full moon parties and full moon raves in Thailand. Like I thought that's what I was going to do. And that Christmas, I got a little package and it was a little point and shoot. And I was like, okay, so definitely not the records that I was asking for, but let's see what happens, right? I had always liked looking at my parents' photo albums from like the 70s and 80s and like figuring out who people are and looking at, family members when they were younger. So the camera, like I was always interested in like that documenting aspect, that stilling a moment, that remembrance and all of that, right? So when fast forward to when I was about, I don't know, maybe about 30, 31. So my daughter was like probably about 5 or 6. I got my first like quote unquote real camera, the camera where you can, change the lens and
Exactly.
all of that. And I was documenting West End, Atlanta, where I was living. I saw gentrification coming and I was like, you know, my community is mostly black at the time. And I was like, this is important. And so I was photographing that. And my daughter was often in those pictures. um, just showing the like her growth, the changing landscape, all of that stuff. So that was uh maybe like 2015, 2016, when I first got my camera, and my daughter's been there with me every step since then.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So during that pregnancy journey and into that transition from Brooklyn to Atlanta, what was that transition like? And what was it like mentally going through that? As like you said, being 25, we always think that we're grown at 25 until we realize we're still just trying to figure it out.
Girl,
So when you're trying to figure it out and you're in this
yeah,
process of birthing this beautiful being,
yeah.
what was that? How were you able to mentally stay stable, and what were the things you were able to do to keep yourself grounded?
All right, so how real are we gonna get here?
Let's get
Real.
real.
Okay, so what happened is I ended up living, like I still knew that being in Atlanta with my daughter's father wasn't going to work. And so I ended up moving in with my uncle who lived in like the country in South Carolina, right? And like, it wasn't a big town, dirt roads and that kind of thing. And I stayed with him for about 2 years. Went back to school, like kind of got myself together a little bit, but it was a very quiet, like I wouldn't say it was like, Melissa got pregnant and then she had to leave, but Melissa did get pregnant and she had to leave, right? And I needed that slowdown. I was able to stay home with my daughter. I was able to, like, my daughter never had a bottle because I was always there to nurse her. Like we were constantly together. Um she never was in daycare. Like it was just me and her, right? And so in a real way, that time was quiet. That time was like prepared prepared me to like fully get into being with her and being a mom. I wasn't necessarily the type of person who, like when I was a kid, I wasn't the type to hold babies. I wasn't the type to like need to be around children or like want children all over me, right? I had to very much grow into being a mom. And like not that I didn't love her, you know what I mean, or nothing like that. But it was like when I brought my daughter home from the hospital, I laid her on the bed and my mom was standing next to me and I looked down at her and she was sleeping and I was just looked at my mom and I was like, "Well, now what?" And she was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Now what? Like what now?" She was like, "You love her, you feed her, you change her, you wash her, like you do all these things." And I was like, "And then what?" And she was like, "What? Do I need to be concerned here? Like, is this like what's going on?" But, it was a learn as I go, you know what I mean? It was learn as I go, but when she was about 2, we left South Carolina and moved to Florida to live with my mom because I kinda was getting the feeling of, like, maybe I don't wanna be in this small town anymore, right? And so I moved to Jacksonville, and I thought that was gonna be a step up, but I ended up falling into, like, a depression during that time. it was hard. I didn't feel like I had the necessary tools to take care of my daughter. I had been living with family. I was living with family again. And even though it was my mom, it was still kind of like I didn't feel like I could do for myself. And if I couldn't do for myself, then I couldn't do for my daughter. Right. And so I remember there were times where I would be in my room, and by this time my daughter's obviously tall enough to open a door and like say my name and all of these things. And I just remember watching the doorknob rattle and her saying, "Mama, mama, 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 mama," and not having and then hearing my mom's voice say, "Linda, mommy's resting, come over here." And that was difficult. That was difficult. I found that I would self-medicate with herbs. You know what I mean? Sometimes I had to smoke. I felt like I had to smoke in order to interact with my daughter, to get down on the floor and color with her, to sing songs and all of those different things that you do with your children when they're that age. I didn't know that. I didn't realize that I could I didn't think that I could do that, right, on my own.
Right.
So yeah, so that was when she was about 2, 3. And then when she turned up, when it was a little bit more going on, but we moved back to Atlanta when my daughter was just about to turn 5, and I was working a very dead end job, and um, a friend of mine was like, "Hey, you should apply to Home Depot for their corporate office." And I was like, "Okay, I guess it'll double my pay, might help me to get on my own 2 feet." And it did. It did. Corporate life is not for me. Corporate life is not for me. That was made very clear to me. But what it afforded me was a chance to be independent. What it afforded me was a chance to be able to stand on my own 2 feet and not need assistance from anyone. In fact, I moved back to Atlanta and stayed with some friends, and they were like, "Look, we have a 2-bedroom with a back bedroom that you and your daughter are welcome to share. We just ask that you don't pay us no rent. Don't worry about the bills. We'll take care of everything. Just get on your feet." And within 6 months, I was able to get a place of my own. And then not only that, I was able to afford to someone else who was also a single mom with a daughter and say, "Hey, look, she needed help." And I said, "I have a 2-bedroom place with a back bedroom that you and your daughter are welcome to share." Right.
Beautiful.
And through having that job, I realized what kind of a tax return you get with children. And I got myself a camera, right? And so that was really the journey from about 25 to, like I said, about 30, 31, of like a reclamation of self, an understanding of what type of woman I am, what I really want. And then not only that, understanding what type of mom I want to be, what kind of influence, and what kind of role model I want to be for my daughter. And so, maybe I'm moving ahead too much, but my daughter has watched me go like from when she was in kindergarten and now she's in 10th grade, right? She's watched me during that time, like go from photographing people in our home at night, right? I have a 9 to 5, then I have my 5 to 9, photographing people in the home at night, and her waking up and being like, "Mommy, you guys are being too loud out in the living room," right? All the way to having, my own studio and traveling the world and, all these different things that have come. So it's been a journey.
That's
It's been a journey.
beautiful. Oh man, that's beautiful. And I think I love what you said about, there isn't a guide, right? But it's like, and especially when you're transitioning from being a woman to being a mother, that is very, very difficult. And a lot of people don't really consider that this is not, no, this is, yes, it's normal, so to speak, but it's not easy. And it's not like we were given a handbook, like, all right, once you get this age, you become a mother, this is what you do. And it's like, yeah, we
Right.
know how to nurture, but it's still one of those things where it is difficult. It is a hard transition, especially when, like, even me, I'm 34 and I'm still trying to get my life together. And I'm like, I'm about to be responsible for a whole nother being. And I'm still trying to figure out my life and how to take care of myself, you know? And it's like that added layer of of course, having faith and knowing that it's all going to work out, but there's
Yeah.
still that fear that happens within it. But also, there are those going to be those years of transition, which aren't easy and which aren't often talked about, you know. But even just hearing your story, that's so beautiful. So I want to dive a little bit into the you said you worked the corporate job, and I love how, you know, a lot of people, I know we struggle with that identity crisis of doing the job we don't like to take care of ourselves, you know, and being okay with making that sacrifice, understanding that this sacrifice is going to prepare me for where I need to be or where I want to be.
Girl.
You were able to make this sacrifice going into the corporate
Yeah.
world, which you knew you didn't like, but you
Yeah.
were still able to not only make that sacrifice, but tap into, I'm gonna work after and do the job that I actually enjoy, and it led up to where we are currently,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that transition of the corporate job, but also balancing this passion to build this new business?
You know, I really started seeing my corporate job as the funding for what I really wanted to do. So I'd be on Home Depot's time looking up like the best times to post on Instagram. I'd be on Home Depot looking up best marketing practices. Like I'd be on Home Depot's time doing everything. Not that I wasn't doing Home Depot work, right?
Balancing, you
So,
know?
I still had my job, but I started growing very resentful of like it was funding everything, but I started growing very resentful of the amount of time that like corporate life was taking from my home, right? Like because I didn't have a car at the time, I was on public transportation. So I would put my daughter on the bus and then so we'd see each other in the morning, getting ready for work and getting ready for school. And then I wouldn't come home until maybe like an hour before she had to go to bed. You know what I mean? So when you add up those hours between Monday through Saturday, because Sunday was my Sundays and, then I had maybe one other day off, it was like I didn't have enough time for her. I couldn't go on field trips. I couldn't, I couldn't, I could provide for her, but what was I was felt missing. I felt like I wasn't there. And then if my daughter was sick, I remember one time my daughter she had like bronchial issues and allergies and stuff like that when she was younger. Thank God we're past that. Oh my gosh. But when she was younger, she had these issues, right? And so she'd be coughing, 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 and she might get a fever spike. And I remember one time her school called me and was like, Linda has a 105 fever. Like you have to come get her. And I went to my manager and I was like, "Hey, look, my daughter is like really sick. I got to go home. I just want to let you know." And she was like, "Yeah, but it's going to count against you." And I was like, "Taking care of my child is going to count against me?" And there were like different things like that. And I just was like, I remember very vividly thinking, I'll never be that type of business owner. I'll always understand, within reason. You know what I mean? If someone's
Right.
calling out all the time, that obviously something's going on here. But when his life changes like that, especially when it's a single mom, I was like, I don't have anyone who can go get her. It's just me. It's just me. Now that was maybe a little black exaggeration because I do have an amazing tribe. And at the time, I was able to call a homegirl and be like, can you go get Linda, my daughter's name, can you go get Linda from school? And then I picked her up, when I got off of work. But, imagine how that made me feel. You know what I mean?
Right.
So eventually it got to a point where I did break ties with Home Depot, and then I started working for another corporate company. Um, and the BS didn't stop, right? The lack of understanding didn't stop. And it wasn't like I was coming in there every day with a sob story, but it was like I have to take care of my child. And I remember one day, this was like shortly after my birthday. So this was actually October 2017. So my daughter was born in 2010. So I could always kind of tell how old my daughter was by the date. So my daughter was 7, about to be 8 in a few months. And it was my birthday weekend. And I had a really great birthday weekend, had taken some time off, and I realized how much I missed being with my friends, being with my family. And I walked in on that Monday, October 16th, and I looked at my desk and I was like, look, Mel, you've been doing this 5 to 9 for 2 years. right? So it wasn't that I just was like, oh, one day I was like, oh, I think I'm just gonna try photography, right? It wasn't that. I had been building and doing things, side projects, different things like that. But that particular day, I just realized I couldn't do it anymore, right? And so I picked up all the great pens and the notebooks and because they had some good nice pens, some real nice writing pens, right? I picked all that up, cleared out my space. Nobody was there at the time. My manager wasn't even there. And I just walked out. I just walked out and I felt great. You know what I mean? I felt free. I felt like, yes, this is what I wanted. And then I remember 2 days later, I was on my back porch talking to my best friend, and I was like, "Girl, what the hell did I do? What did I do?" She was like, "Mel, usually I'm with you on things, but I don't know, girl. Like I'm having a hard time understanding why you left job security, why you left insurance, why you left, the ability to rise through the ranks. Like, why did you leave that?" And I was like, I don't know. But, I looked at my daughter. I was like, all right, cool. I got one more check coming, one more check, no savings. And I was like, hey, I didn't work those 2 years behind the scenes and late at night to not bet on myself. Right. I believed in my talent. I believed in my skill. And I told myself, I said, okay, all that research you were doing on Home Depot time, it's time to put that into effect. Right. I started s- out Spellman. It's not true, but I started paying attention to Spellman, right? I realized that Spellman, the atmosphere of Spellman resonated with me. Like I had tried different scenes in Atlanta and was like, well, is it gonna be this scene or is it gonna be that scene? Like where do I see a reflection of myself? And when I went to a Spelman event, I was like, okay, there's elders in here, there's young girls in here, but everybody looks like they could talk about art or travel, what the best wine is. Like they just look cultured. And I was like, this is a reflection of me. This is a reflection of the woman that I want to be
Mm.
or the woman that I am, and I'm excavating her and I'm chipping away to find her, right? So I started just like really focusing on like how I can work with Spellman and putting that intention out there. And eventually someone from Spellman's Museum of Art reached out and was like, "Hey, we have a Deborah Roberts show coming. We saw that you're local to West End. Would you like to come do photography one Saturday a month while the exhibit is here?" I was like, "Heck yeah, absolutely, I want to do that." Right. At the same time, my homeboy Carlton Mackey from Black Men Smile hit me up and was like, at the time he was working with Emory. He was a professor at Emory, and he was like, "Hey, we have this thing coming up where we're having artists come in and work with the students on a project." And I was like, word. I said to myself that week, I said, if I don't get my shit together by March or February, then you're gonna have to look for a job. But I said, it's October, give yourself a few months, like go hard. And the opportunities just started coming in because I was walking the path that I was supposed to walk. You understand what I'm saying? I I mean, it wasn't all great. I still had to figure out some things. I found an old rate sheet maybe a couple months ago. I found an old rate sheet where I was offering 1 hour shoots, $75, $100. You know what I'm saying? Offering photo and video for uh like 250. You know what I'm saying? Like totally unsustainable, right? I mean, I would have had to work every day in order to meet the bills and everything that I needed. You know what I'm saying? But I was on that path, right? And as I kept focusing on the things that moved me, I realized that motherhood like opened up it opened my heart. It helped me to see that I shoot from my womb. You
Mm.
understand what I'm saying? Like, and that's like phrase that I use because especially being a black woman, right? Black women care about everybody. 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 Like, will we it you're gonna be hard pressed to find a black woman who won't care, right? Who won't look out. I tell my daughter, because now she's older, so she's not always with me. You know what I mean? I tell her, if you're ever lost, if you ever need help, find a black woman my age or older
Mm,
because she'll look out for you. Right. And so that motherhood aspect helped me to become a better photographer because not that I was never an empathetic person to begin with. Right. I'm a middle child. I'm an only girl. You know what I'm saying? I always had to look out, but it amplified it to a point where I guess maybe now I'm an auntie in a way, and now I can be like, I call everybody baby. You understand what I'm saying? Like, hey, baby, thank you, baby. Can I have this baby? Because I see everyone not as my child necessarily, but I see everybody through the lens of nurturing. And if I can't say if I won't know that if I didn't have my daughter when I had her and grew up, and we grew up together, we're still growing up together, but if I didn't have her at that time, would that piece of me have been activated in the way that it has been activated now? You know what I mean? Does that make
right.
sense? You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Like it really is a thing. So I know you asked about like what that transition was like. It was crazy as hell. You know what I'm saying? Like I thought I was losing my mind. I was always trying to stay one step ahead. But at the same time, my daughter's feet are growing and growing and growing, and she needs shoes and she needs new clothes, and she is asking for, no longer was she at the age where I could give her 25 cents when we go to the grocery store, and she could get one of those little like things, those machines that you put a
Candy.
in. You know what I'm saying? My daughter was no longer at that age, like where it was like now she started wanting things and things for real things to now where she's 15 and she's like, "Mommy, can you cash at me? Can you cash at me $35 so I could go to Goodwill?" And you know what I'm saying? So it's just like, it's she made me rise to a higher purpose. She made me embrace my sacred calling. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like that was her influence on me. That's what she gave me. And on top of that, the universe saw fit to send me a Capricorn. Okay. I'm a
Yes, Cap.
Libra.
I'm a
You're a
Cap.
Cap. Okay. So I am a Libra mom. Okay. I am a mom who's like, hey, baby, easy breezy. We're going to do it when we do it. You know what I'm saying? Hang loose. You know what I'm saying? Let's have a good time. My daughter is, Mommy, last week you told me that this week, today, in fact, that we would be going to the movies at 3 o'clock, and it's now 2:30. We haven't left yet. I want to hold you to what you said. We'd be leaving soon. Or, Linda, we're going to go on a trip. What's the weather like? This is what she's asking me at like 8 years old. Like, what's the weather? I want to make sure I'm prepared. You understand what I'm saying?
That's a Cap. You girl, you got a Capricorn.
I want to make sure my clothing is weather appropriate. You understand what I'm saying? And me, I show up. I'm like, dang, it's chilly. She's like, I told you to pack your jacket. You understand what I'm saying? Like, so it's it's been taking cues from my child as she grows and understands herself and being like, you know what, maybe I need to be a little bit more like my baby. Maybe I need to incorporate some more things, right? And as I've just been going through this journey of becoming a better photographer, better businesswoman, all of that stuff, all of that is Trump. All of that is downplayed a little bit just because I'm becoming a better mom.
Hmm, that's beautiful. So how have you found the balance of, especially like in that transition and now owning your own studio, how have you found that balance of still being an active parent and showing up? Because you know how you spoke about earlier, having the corporate job and not and feeling like having that resentment because you weren't there. How have you been able to build that balance within your business to where you are more present and you're still able to do the jobs that you enjoy doing?
I bring my daughter with me. Like she's seen everything. You understand what I'm saying? Like she's seen the first studio, the second studio, the third studio, and the fourth studio. You understand what I'm saying? My daughter has seen, I remember she was maybe about 8 or 9 and she had a friend over and they were in her room playing, right? The door was kind of cracked open a little bit. And I heard my daughter say, "What? You never been to an art show?" Okay, so elite, so elite, right? Like I balance it by opening her world, you know what I mean? I balance it by um taking her around my friends and like I balance it by inviting her in and showing her something different than what maybe she might get, like another child might get. Like she's grown up in the art world, right? So she's grown up understanding entrepreneurial like endeavors. Um, she's grown up with the understanding that anything you want to do, you can do,
Mm,
regardless of what people tell you, regardless of what it feels like in the moment, regardless of how maybe like this feels like I can't do it. It can be done. You know what I'm saying? So now that's bringing my daughter into my world, right? But I'm able to show up for her in ways where the things that she wants to do, the things she wants to try, right? I'm able to be there with her every step of the way. She's now talking about she wants to have a thrift store, right? Well, what's so awesome about that is that I was able to like me and my homegirl Nikki from and Aaliyah from Everything Dope, a local thrift shop here in Atlanta. I was able to say, "Hey, yo, my daughter wants to do thrifting. Like she wants to do thrifting as a business. Do you mind if she shadows y'all this summer?" Right? They were like, "Yeah, bring her in." And so my daughter was able to go to them two times a week, 3 times a week sometimes to just follow them around. You know what I'm saying? And learning what it means to have a business. Is my daughter going to become a photographer? I don't think so. And that hurts my heart every time I think about it. That I'm like, everything the light touches is our kingdom, right? Like this could be yours too. You know what I mean? And I'm a 90s kid. And I now have like a 90s kid junior, right? But I thought this is what she might want, but it's not. I'm able to give her the experiences maybe through the people I know or in my mind I don't see any trip too big. I don't see anything that my daughter can't do, right? And I'm going to feed that. I'm going to feed that. So when my daughter comes to me and says, "Mommy, can we get some plaster of Paris?" And I'm like, "Girl, what do you need plaster of Paris for?" She's like, "Well, I'm making this sword and I wanna do," and I'm like, "Don't tell me no more, just don't get it on the carpet." You understand what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna pour into her in any little thing that she, like, wants to do that's, like, on the up and up, right? Like, I don't be on no foolishness around the house, but, it pleases me to know that when people talk with my child that she's, like, holding her own, you know what I'm saying? And she's just a dope kid. You know what I'm saying? And I get the chance to like because of the type of lifestyle that I was able to build, I'm able to like watch that in real time, not like how I would have watched it if I had stayed in corporate and I'm only seeing my daughter 2 hours a day before, you know what I'm saying? Like, I get home and then she has to go right to bed. You know what I'm saying? So it's like
right.
it's 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 been a process. You know what I'm saying? And we're still trying to figure it out. But um I'm very thankful for what we've been through. I'm thankful to know that my daughter and I have grown up together. You know what I mean? And so sometimes my partner, his name is Flux, Flux will be like, he'll listen to us and he'll be like, y'all sound like sisters. Y'all sound like sisters going back and forth. We be roasting each other, you know what I'm saying? This, that, and the third. And I'm like, because in some aspect, not that I know I birthed her, you know what I'm saying? I'm very aware. I remember the third trimester so well that I know that my daughter and I are not siblings. However, in terms of growing and, getting that knowledge of self and then gaining the knowledge enough to do the knowledge and to incorporate the knowledge, my daughter very are like we're at different stages of life. I'm 40, she's 30, she's 30. She's Capricorn, so she is 35. But I'm 40, my daughter is 15. But we're very much like kind of feels like sometimes we're step in step in terms of like getting to these levels of understanding to start to raise up. You know what I mean?
Right. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I can't wait to talk to you after because my daughter's about to be a Libra and I'm a Capricorn. So I'm gonna need as much advice. I'm doing the
And
flip.
she's gonna be a Libra too. Okay, let's talk. We'll talk later.
But just hearing this is so beautiful because even, as I prepare for this new journey, I'm always trying to think of what is this supposed to look like, right? And knowing that I have a studio and she can come in the studio and be a part of my process, and not necessarily for her to be like sadly to take over the kingdom, but just to be able to see mommy in action and to be able to see that it's a totally different experience from what other kids may experience when it comes to corporate world and traveling and going to sports games and all these different things. But I think that's just so beautiful hearing that, making your child a part of your business, if that makes sense.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. I hate to cut you off. I have a built-in assistant. You understand what I'm saying? Like my daughter has been with me in the studio so much that I could be like, baby, I need that at 45 degrees. Go grab that, go grab this modifier. Let's get the paper down. Let's put the paper up. Lena, grab the C stand. She'll be like, which one? Do you want the rolling one or do you want the one with the legs that come? I mean, like, she understands the lingo of the studio to the point where, to the point where I almost like, I'm like, I don't like that photo. And she was like, you want me to move, a couple degrees? Like, do I need to raise, maybe you should raise the light up. Like
Mm,
she understands these things, right? That's why it burns so much that like she doesn't want to do these things, but she's knowledgeable in it, right? And so I think as you bring your daughter in, the fact that you're having a daughter, right? It's amazing. Just from that aspect of being a woman, having a girl, right? And you'll be able to show her all the things and the amazing things that you've accomplished, that you're going to accomplish. She's gonna be there with you every step of the way, being like, baby, there ain't nothing that my mama can't do. There is nothing that my mama can't do. Watch what my mama works. Watch how she works. Look, that's my mom. Like for
that's
real. Like for real.
right. That's beautiful. And I'm gonna be honest. When I found out I was having a girl, I was nervous.
Yeah, what did you think about first? What was the first thing when you thought?
They got pregnant. My mama was
Oh,
like,
her
"Really?"
getting
And I
pregnant?
was
Your
like,
daughter getting pregnant?
yes. The first thing when I found out that I was having a girl, I was like, "Girls get pregnant." And my mama was like, "Really?" And I was like, "I have to process everything, mom. Like that's the first thing that came to mind." And she was like, "I'm gonna have to pray for you." Like, she's like, "You just fast forwarded to like," and I was like, "I know." It's
You really jumped some hurdles to get there. Like the first thing I thought about was, man, I got to do hair. That's what I thought. That's what I thought. But you
man.
went to like,
I skipped over childhood. I skipped over adolescence.
you went up there. You went up there, girl. Okay, I feel it. I feel it. I feel it.
Because I always felt like I would be a boy mom. I work in sports. I'm a tomboy. And I have a twin sister. She has two boys, and I was like, we gonna keep this boy train going. And it was like, we're giving you the girl. And it's like, whoo, okay,
But having a girl is like, I don't have the perspective of having a boy. Having a girl is, I think sometimes the thing I struggle most with is, I can't say the most, but one of the things that like is an opportunity for me to grow. I don't want to say struggle. Opportunity for me is that not placing my experiences on my girl,
mm,
right? And not being like, well, I went through this as a girl, so you're definitely gonna go through this, or things like that. Um, and offering my daughter space enough to have her own experiences. I mean, guidance, of course, right? We guide our children, but allowing her the room to be her own person, right?
right,
And not being like, well, I know what it's like to be a girl. I tell her that crap all the time. Like, I remember what it was like to be 15. Don't try to pull nothing on me. 15 wasn't that long ago. That's what I'll say. Like, whatever her age is, I'll be like, yo, it wasn't that long ago. I remember, right? But you just have that there's a level of tenderness, that I'm sure a mom with a son could feel as well. But it's slightly different because you see yourself in them,
right.
you
And I
know?
think that's the part where it's like my mom always teases me. She's like, "You're about to get the hell that you gave me," and I was like, "I was a good child." For the most part. But it's one of those like I know it's a challenge. It's going to be a challenge. And we embrace challenges, especially as entrepreneurs, as creatives. And it's like, but this is going to be a challenge which I know is going to stretch me the most in so many ways, especially knowing me and my husband also created this, but it's going to be a beautiful challenge.
Yes, yes, girl. Yes, girl. Baby girl's gonna grow up so quick, you're gonna blink, and then she's sitting up, and then she's crawling, and then she's running, and then she's skipping. You're gonna blink. So, always they always told me like, enjoy. Like, don't ever wish I can't wait till she's, no, be very present in this moment because I promise you it doesn't last forever. And even though my daughter at 15 still tries to sneak into my lap, or maybe not even sneak, sometimes she'll sit right in my lap. And I remember when, her whole body could fit. And now it's legs and arms and, torso all over the doggone place. And she can put her arm on top of my shoulder because she's so tall. Like, where did the time go?
Right. That's beautiful. So now, do you want more kids?
I would like more children, but with recent things with my health, I was diagnosed with fibroids. And like the doctors have looked at all the tests, they've looked at all the x rays and MRIs and all of that stuff. And they were like, we just don't see that happening for you. We really think that you should have a hysterectomy. And that is my current situation because my partner, who's older than me, he doesn't have any children. And I would love to be able to give him, a child. That would just, I'd love to be able to have a child with him, right? Especially considering that, like, the way things were with my daughter's father and I, right? And like, we never, like, I didn't have anyone there to like, how do I put it? I didn't have anyone there when I was pregnant with my daughter to like marvel at the wonder of a changing body and that the kicks and the getting bigger and the appointments and the watching, what I'm saying? I didn't have that. And I want that with him, but the doctors are very loud and clear about, yeah, we could try to remove the fibroids, but you won't have much of a uterus left. Or we could take out the fibroids, but and even if we do leave your uterus, it'll be a mess and it won't be enough to house a child, right? Or they'll say, all right, let's say we do get them all and your uterus is still functioning. If you were to get pregnant, what's to say that the baby doesn't rupture outside of your uterus, killing you, right?
Mm.
And the baby. So there's still so much that I feel that I can give a child, right? Did I think that, you know, prior to uh being with my partner, did I think that I would have another child? Probably not. You know what I mean? Because I was like, all right, well, look, I had my daughter at 25. By the time I'm 42, you know what I mean? Not that you ever stop being mommy, but, 42, 43, my daughter's going to be graduating, from high school and going to college and living her life and starting her life. And I was like, dang, at 43, I'm going to have an empty nest. Like, that's crazy, right? That sounds like a little, because the 40s, for the 40s, you know what I'm saying? The 40s are the new 20s and, all that kind of thing. But life happens, and I partnered up with an amazing man, and like what we're building is so healthy and so strong and so real that I started thinking like, okay, maybe maybe okay, I could see myself being a mom, and like I started talking to my daughter about being an older sibling, and so last year when we moved in together last year. Like, now we're all in the same house, and it's very nice, like, it's lovely. About maybe 2 weeks after we moved in, I started experiencing, like, fatigue, insane levels of fatigue, to where walking from the bed to the bathroom was tiring me out. Walking down a hallway, I'd have to stop and rest. I couldn't understand what was going on, I just felt like my life was draining out of me, and I went to the doctor. And my doctor was like, "Yes, definitely she felt my abdomen and she was like, "Yeah, I think you have fibroids." And I had a diagnosis like a year before that from a white male doctor, and he said the same thing because I was having really horrible cycles, and he was like, "Yeah, you have fibroids, and like, you're work for yourself. You can't afford anything, so the best thing for you to do would be to have a hysterectomy." Like either birth control or a hysterectomy. And even though I knew what he was saying was false because I didn't feel like that was my only options, I allowed it to sink into my psyche, and it stopped me from doing something about it until they grew. And so last October, or like November, really the month of November, the whole month of November, I was just losing strength to the point where I couldn't even chop vegetables without sitting down, and even that exhausted me. And I went to the doctor, finally found a doctor. Shout out to the Black Women's Wellness Network here in Atlanta. They offer like a sliding scale. I got a full checkup and everything, like a wellness, everything, blood, all of that for $60. Right. And so
Wow.
they work with women who are uninsured. So shout out to them. The doctor or the nurse practitioner called me after seeing her. And the next day she called me and she said, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I'm going to pick up my daughter from school." She was like, "Is there anyone else who can pick her up?" And I was like, "No, what's up?" She was like, "I need you to go to the closest hospital because your iron levels are at a 5 when I like normal iron is 11 to 16. So she was like, "You have no blood in your body. Like the blood in like there's nothing." She was like, "That's why you're having headaches. That's why your heart is racing because your brain and your heart are struggling to figure out where they can send the blood. Where can they send it to that needs it the most? That's why you're cold all the time. That's why all these different things." She was like, "You're close to heart failure. Like, I don't know how you're walking around." So I had to have an
Wow.
emergency blood transfusion. I felt a little bit better, but then I started feeling, so that's November. So I had emergency blood transfusion, started feeling a little bit better. I was like, okay. December, I started experiencing birth pains, birth pains. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what my days were gonna be like or when the pain would hit me. Sometimes it would be in the morning, sometimes it'd be in the afternoon, sometimes it'd be overnight, but they came. They came. And when I say birth pains, baby, I'm talking about like active labor. It felt
Mm.
like 4 hours. And I'm talking about like not just an hour, not just 2 hours. I'm talking about like 6, 7, 8 hours of feeling like remembering what birth felt like and thinking that's what this feels like, except I'm having it every single day. And I went back to the Black Women's Wellness Network and they checked me out and they were like, "There's something in your cervix." Like, and we don't know if it's cancer. We don't know. I feel like we need to do a biopsy. We need to do all this different stuff. And I finally got insurance, went to an OBGYN in January. And by that time, I wasn't feeling, I wasn't having the birth pains every day. But that particular day, I went to go see my doctor. I had, I started feeling cramps and I was like, crap. She checked me out, opened me up, right? She touched my cervix and my pain levels went through the roof,
Whoa.
through the roof. And she was like, "You have a fibroid sitting in your cervix and it's about to come out. You're about to give birth." Like she said that my cervix was 10 centimeters dilated because of the fibroid. So what I had been feeling all of December was this fibroid slowly moving down and opening me up, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So saw her that morning, and by that evening, or really like the next morning, I was in surgery, and they weren't able to get all of it because it was so big. And they were like, if we try to cut around it, we don't know what we're cutting into. And so that's where I'm at right now, right? I do wish that doctors and nurses had better language for women who have fibroids because what they'll say is you won't be able to have any more children yet you have the uterus of a 5-month pregnant woman. And it's like, real, how can you tell me that I can't have children, but I can give birth to a fibroid,
Right.
you know? So that's where that's where I'm at now. In my mind, I feel that in my spirit, I feel that they don't know what I know. They don't know that I've conquered so many like challenges. They don't know that my my will is strong. They don't know that I speak truth to power. They don't know that I'm a master manifester and I can manifest this baby if I want to. But I have to get the fibroids out of the way in order to do that. So when you ask me, do I want to have children? Do I want to have more children? Yeah, I do. But this journey has taken a lot. There's been bright spots in all of this. One of them is my daughter and I, and this is something you might come to, you know what I'm saying? There comes a point, and maybe you even remember for yourself, there comes a point in a girl's life where she starts to take over her hair and she starts to do her own hair, right? And no longer is mom or someone else taking care of it. So while I was going through all of this, my daughter was like, well, I still need someone to do my hair. And I'd be like, Linda, I don't have the strength, baby. Like, I'll sit in the bathroom with you, but you got to wash your hair. I can't wash it. You got to condition your hair. I can't condition it. You got to put the products in. I can't do that because I just don't have the energy to do it. And she's become a whiz at doing her hair. I mean, Capricorn probably. That's probably has something because she's like, I want it a certain way. But she's become a whiz at doing her own hair, and it looks good. It's actually doing probably better than when I was doing it. You know what I'm saying? Like, my daughter had to grow up a little bit more because mommy couldn't do, right? She's so used to seeing me do everything. She's so used to seeing me hold it down. She's so used to seeing like coming to me before she goes to anyone else. Not just because I'm the sole provider, but um, I might say, ask your father, and she'd be like, I'm gonna ask you first. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, she looks to me. And so there had to be a moment where maybe the cord was cut a little bit because it had to be cut. And I watched my daughter grow up just a little bit more because of what was ailing me.
Right.
You know what I'm
But also
saying?
you're also still showing her another side of strength, and I think that's the thing that as women, again, as women, we go through so much. We're the provider, we're the protector, we're the strong ones for everyone. And when we have to be strong for ourselves, it's hard for people to see that when they're so used to you already being that, when they have to
Yes.
see another level of strength, another level of surrender, and understanding like this comes with being a woman is surrendering,
That right there,
and
baby. That right there. My daughter said to me, she said, Mommy, are you okay? And I said, yeah, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm just a little tired. She was like, you're not good. Sit down. And I was like, what? She was like, Mommy, just chill. Like, relax because I can do it. And what it's so funny because even now I'm just connecting the dots. Um, and things were a little rough when she was younger, when I was like trying to find my feet. And I remember she was maybe like 3 or 4. Like, so this was like when I was kind of depressed. I remember her picking something up and I was like, Lena, let me have that. And she was like, I could do it, mama. I could do it. Because she was probably like 4. Because like when kids get to be about 3, 4, like closer to 4, they start thinking they could do everything by themselves. It's really sweet, right? And then by 5, they mastered like whatever it is they think they can do. But at 4, she was like, I could do it. I could carry it. I got it, mama. And so hearing her say that, you know, last year that I could do it, mom. Like, sit down. I can do it. It's surrender because I my daughter was right. Sometimes you can't do everything. I mean, for so long of my life or enough of my life, I had to rely on others. My independence was like that was a thing I had to have. I had to be independent. I had to tell myself and show myself not even show others, but I had to show myself that I could do it, right, on my own. So feeling as close to death as I felt and not understanding what was happening to my body, just to have my child look at me and say, I could do it, mom. Just sit down, relax, truly surrender, really humbling, but beautiful,
Amazing.
because I ain't raised no punk. You know what I'm saying? I am raising a, a young woman to be clear about who she is and to be able to stand on her own too. And I do have to show her a little bit of like vulnerability. You know what I'm saying? I do have to encourage her to be a little softer, but when my baby wants something, she gonna get that shit. You know what I'm saying? She's not gonna stop till she gets it, right? And I realized that I instilled that. And they say the kid's gonna be all right. My baby will be all right.
That's beautiful. So, for any woman out there who's going through a similar journey, what is one thing that you would want to leave with them?
If it does not feel right, go see about it. If your cycle feels different, go see about it. If you're experiencing any kind of pain, go see about it. Because what I find is that, and through talking with other women and even sharing my experience, so many women, when I posted about my surgery and everything in January, so many women came forward to me and was like, I'm going through this. Maybe not the specifics, but I too have a fibroid story. A friend of mine had a stroke because of her fibroids. The fibroid was taking so much of her blood, similar to me, but her levels were closer to like 3, right?
Wow.
So she had a stroke. Another friend, like just so many people had these stories, and I realized how prevalent this was. I knew that fibroids affected women. My mom had a hysterectomy, right? But she didn't quite tell me why. She just was like, "Oh, I had a hysterectomy." You know, I opened up about it, but it's a very private thing. But why is it private? You know, why can't we talk to our sisters? And again, we're Black women, so we feel for everybody. It's like if I'm not sharing this part of my story and letting people think that she's just happy to have one child, no, it's not that. I want more children, but this thing is happening to me, right? So if you have fibroids or if there's anything going on with your body in terms of your womb health, I mean, in general, go check yourself, get yourself checked out, right? But if you notice changes, I was a very regular, like my cycle came very regular ever since I first started having my cycle. So to have something that was like debilitating and had me bent over and like crying to God, I was like, something's not right. Something's not quite, something's not quite right here. And because I didn't have insurance, I allowed that to stop me from finding and seeking the care that I really needed. But there's help out there, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes it just takes the courage to say, I need help, you know what I'm saying? And don't let it wait because I think we all know in terms of maternal health for Black women, things get a little sketchy for us,
Right.
right? And I know that Black women, like when I looked at the symptoms for fibroids, it was like heavy bleeding, anemia. I had like a list of like 6 things. And the very last thing was Black woman. Like being black and female already is a symptom of
Wow.
fibroids. You understand what I'm saying? Black women are admitted like are given hysterectomies younger and younger and younger. I have friends who came forward and were like, Mel, I didn't know you had fibroids. I had a hysterectomy when I was like 31, 32.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? 34. You know what I'm saying? Like I can't say they don't care about our wombs, but we have to care enough about our wombs. And in caring about our wombs, we're able to advocate for ourselves and we're able to say, I don't want that. Right. So that's what I've been telling my doctors. I don't want a hysterectomy. Don't push a hysterectomy on me. Tell me about my options. And if you can't tell me about my options, direct me to the doctor who will.
So, advocating for yourself.
Advocate and get checked out. Ask questions. Be curious about your body. Be like, this isn't normal. I wonder what this means. And don't be afraid of what you may hear because, excuse me, don't be afraid of what you may hear because that fear will stop you from getting the treatment that you deserve.
Oof, oof. That's a good one. That's a good one. Man, Mel, this was a great conversation from an amazing Libra. Yes, listen. Now, thank you again so much for your honesty, for your vulnerability, and just for sharing your truths with us. I know that this not only helped me, but it's going to help so many other women that listen to this. So again, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me, B. It was a pleasure.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Baby Bump and Business. I hope today's conversation reminded you that you're not alone in this journey and that there's so much power in building something beautiful while becoming someone new. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate, review, or share it with another mama or creative who needs the encouragement. Your support helps this community grow and lets more stories like ours be heard. To stay connected and get updates on new episodes and real talk from creative moms like you, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Baby Bump and Business. Until next time, keep creating, keep growing, and give yourself all the grace that you deserve.